Filed lawsuit claims the UNC Board of Trustees approved the hiring of Bill Belichick in an illegal closed session last December. Former Provost Chris Clemens filed a suit claiming that he was forced to resign after raising concerns about decisions and debates in those closed sessions, including Belichick's hiring.
He cites multiple meetings and decisions, including faculty tenure, athletic department finances, and financial outcomes of joining the SEC or the Big Ten. He alleges the trustees didn't provide proper notice or public access and used the message deleting apps like Signal to, quote, evade records, retention, and public inspection. UNC has yet to comment on the lawsuit.
Joining us now, our chief of the analyst, Khalif Feroz Khalif. When you look at the lawsuit, it talks about a retaliation campaign, a history of closed-door meeting violations. I mean, this guy clearly has a bone to pick with them, but the real question people want to know is, what does this do to Bill Belichick? Could he lose his job if it was found that they improperly hired him?
I don't know if it can go that far, but there could be a number of problems and violations in terms of how they got there. And so if you get an injunction placed for the actual hiring, yes, he could theoretically, if a judge heard that case and was able to say, I'm looking to pause and remove what occurred at this meeting because it was an unlawful meeting, then yes, I don't think we get there any scenario at all. But even not because it's Bill Belichick, just because this is a major college football coach that's went through this process. They're already in the middle of the season. There are a number of hurdles that would stop that from happening. But technically, if the meeting occurred in an unlawful manner and it should not have occurred in that way, then yes. But after, I should say, let me start with this. They had the meeting. If the allegations are they discussed things in the closed session, but they ultimately still voted on him and honored it and created the contract in an open meeting. So even if the discussion, the communication, how I got to the end game was in violation, the ultimate goal was not. And so it would be a long shot to see an individual like Bill Belichick losing their job because of closed session meetings violation.
The former UNC Chapel Hill Provost Chris Clemens says all of this should have been public. He wants, in the lawsuit, he wants mandatory training for future trustees. Who do you hold accountable, and how do you have accountability moving forward?
If the allegations are true, and that's a big if. I mean, I say this all the time. Folks are innocent till proven guilty in the criminal component in a civil claim. They have the burden, the plaintiff does, of proving his case. And so in this scenario right here, he says in the beginning, as you said, that the Board of Trustee members, they have to be transparent of the state transparency laws, open meeting and public records law. But he also goes on to say that the board must conduct public business in public. So who's responsible as a person that sits on a number of boards? I sit on as a Board of Trustee member for a college in the area. For me, it's upon myself to know the rules, but we also have counsel that advises of the rules. And so before there is a motion made to go to closed session, we're obviously having conversation with the attorney before that saying, have we met the requirements of 143-318.11? I've heard that so many times. I got it off the top of my head because we're going to say, okay, are we talking about a legal matter? Are we talking about upcoming or pending litigation? Are we doing this to prevent disclosure of information that's private? There's about 10 things on that list. And if we don't check any of those things on the list, we're not going to closed session. But we already had that discussion before we make the recommendation to go. What he's alleging is they did go through that step, that it was something that they don't want to disclose. But it's when they got back there that they had discussions that went outside of the scope of what they said they were going to close session for. Now, we've gotten that scenario as well, where it's about to go there, you're right on that borderline, and someone says, hey, remember, we're in closed session. We can only talk about this defined moment, and then it brings the meeting right back. But I think it's incumbent upon trustee members in council to advise you of what you can do in those situations.
Well, so the former provost who brought the suit, what could he potentially gain if this all comes out to be true? Is it money? Is it his job back? What does he gain from this if he wins?
There's a number of things in here that talk about retaliation. So I'm under an impression that it's not just training that he wants, but it's also compensation. That I was, forced out is what he alleges. That no, I didn't retire, and gracefully walk away and bow my head. That I was pushed out on some retaliatory campaign. But I think those are the types of things that you're seeking when you bring claim, but then also awareness. This isn't some random guy walking off the street. He's a provost, and as he says in here, he's an astrophysicist, highly intelligent person, recognized that, hey, I think there's a violation that's occurring, brought it to folks' attention, and then he feels like he was retaliated against. So yeah, normally that's money.
Okay. Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes, thank you so much. We'll see where this goes.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.